breathing human beings change their mind about things sometimes. You get new, that's exactly right. You get new information, and you're actually not a stubborn, pig-headed person, but you listen, and sometimes you change your mind. See, but what they're worried about is they don't trust you. They don't trust you. They think if they admit to you that they changed their minds, that somehow you'll think less of them because they don't trust you. And see, my position is I trust all of you. When you ask me a question, I'm going to give you my answer. You may like the answer, you may not like the answer, but you're not going to be confused. You're not going to be thinking up is down and down is up. You're going to say, okay, well, this is what he thinks, and either you like it or you don't. But, man, we need something like that in the Oval Office. We've had 7 years now of a really good teleprompter reader. You know, a guy who other people write his words, you know, and listen, that Senator Rubio is great. He gives a good 60-second speech in those debates. He really does. He memorizes those 60 seconds. But, man, when they showed him that video and he was looking at himself on TV and there was no 60-second speech he had memorized to answer, uh-oh. You saw that look on his face. He was like, and staring down at his pad and doodling something on his pad. And that's not what we need in the Oval Office, everybody. We've had that for the last 7 years. So here's the problem with first-term senators. They're first-term senators. We elected a first-term senator 7 years ago. Someone who never managed anything more than a 30-person Senate staff, and we put him in charge of the largest and most complex government the world's ever known, and now we're wondering 7 years later why things didn't go so well. Well, it went poorly because he doesn't know how to run anything, because he never has run anything. You know, Ted and Marco give great speeches. And if being president of the United States was about giving great speeches, boy, they would be top contenders. But being president of the United States is about running things, deciding things, making things happen, just like when you're a governor. You know, when there's an ice storm out here, you don't want to hear a great speech from the governor. You want him to make the roads safe and get the power back on. If there's a tornado, you don't want to hear a great speech. You want the governor to come out here, clear the debris away, help to start to rebuild your neighborhoods, and get things moving. When the budget's being debated in Des Moines, you don't want the governor to just give a good speech. You want the governor to bring everybody together, get the budget balanced, and send everybody home. And by the way, not raise your taxes while he's doing it. I mean, that's the stuff you want. And isn't that what we want in Washington? In Washington right now, they get nothing done. It's a debating society, and not even an entertaining one at that. They bicker and argue with each other and call each other names, and they get nothing done. You know, you can't do that when you're a governor. People look at you and inspect the results. That's why they put you there. You can't refer it to the subcommittee for an amendment. You got to actually make a decision. Because I think all the time, you know, the United States Senate, it's a lot like school, isn't it? We got some school kids here. They could probably agree with me on this, I think. See, because like in school, they tell you what time to show up at school, right? Okay. He's verifying that for me back there. And in the United States Senate, they tell you what time you have to be on the floor of the Senate. In school, they tell you where to sit, right? Yeah. In the United States Senate, they tell you where to sit. They assign you a desk. In school, they give you the list of questions you have to answer, your homework, right? Right, okay. Now, in the United States Senate, they give you the list of questions you have to answer yes or no to every day. All right. Now, in school, they tell you when you can go out for recess, right? Yeah. In the United States Senate, they tell you when you can go out for recess. Now, in school, they tell you when summer vacation comes, when you go home and you don't have to go back to school for a few months, right? Yeah. In the United States Senate, they send you out for summer vacation to tell you when you don't have to come back to go to work. That's not the way it works when you're a governor. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're on the job. Something happens, you get the call. A police officer is shot. A neighborhood goes on fire. A chemical plant blows up. 2.5 feet of snow hit your state, and you're in New Hampshire. You better get home fast. Right? There's no excuses. You got to do your job. Yet, when you're a United States Senator, you have none of those responsibilities. Man, let's not make the same mistake again. And by the way, also, let's not send somebody to the White House whose only experience is being in a fake boardroom in New York City, looking into a camera and saying, "You're fired." I mean, that's not the way to do it either. Because I got to tell you the truth. That's not the way it works in Washington either. You know, if the Speaker of the House won't post the bill you want, you can't fire him. If the Senate Majority Leader won't post the nominee for the bench you want, you can't fire him. You know, that's not the way it works. And if you want to build a wall across the entire southern border, you can't go to the President of Mexico and present the bill, because he's not going to pay for it. I don't care who asks. I don't care how beautiful the wall is. It's a beautiful wall. We'll build it across the entire world. The wall looks fabulous, and we'll have a door in the middle of it, and the door will open and close, and the good people will go in, and the bad people will come out, and it'll be a beautiful wall and have my name on it, and everybody will love it. It'll be a great wall. Please, come on, right? Let's get to work. We got a lot of work to do in this country. We got challenges, we got opportunities, we got a lot of work to do. It's time to put somebody in the Oval Office who actually knows how to do the work. Do the work you sent us there to do. Not give the pretty speech off the teleprompter and not do anything else, but go and do the work. So that's the end of my speech for today. Now we're going to go to the fun part. The fun part is you get to ask me questions and I get to answer them. Now, it's very easy. No microphones. This is a small enough place. We don't need microphones. I got the only microphone here. And if somebody really has a soft voice and you want a microphone, I'll hand you mine. So here's what we're going to do. One rule for my town hall meetings in Iowa. In New Jersey, where I've done 134 town hall meetings as governor, I have 4 rules that will tell you the difference between Iowa and New Jersey. I need 4 rules in New Jersey to keep things under control. In Iowa, just 1 rule. The 1 rule is you raise your hand, I call on you. That's it. You ask me a question, I'll give you an answer. I guarantee you by the time you're done, you will not be confused about where I stand. I will answer you directly. So raise your hands on any issue. I'm ready to go. All right. Whoop. Yes, sir.
I'm a veteran, and here we have the luxury of having a VA hospital right across the river. I stopped going to the VA hospital years ago because it took sometimes months to get tests run or whatever the case may be. You're the president, what are you going to do to fix that?
He asked about the VA hospital. First, thank you for your service as a veteran for our country. And I would tell you this. The problem with the VA, we have to fix it in the short term and the long term. In the short term, what you should be able to do is take your veterans card and go to any doctor or any hospital, anywhere you want, get your health care and get it paid for. But we got to fix the VA too. That's a short-term solution. The long-term solution is to fix the VA. We got to understand what the VA is now. It's a hospital system. That's all it is. It's a hospital system. And so why are we putting, with all due respect to them, admirals and generals in charge of a hospital system? They don't know the first thing about running a hospital system. So what I would do is go to the best hospital CEO I could find in the country and go to him or her and say, listen, your country needs you for 2 years. Leave your private practice, come and run the Veterans Administration and straighten out this hospital system and run it like it was a private system. There are lots of good folks, as you know, in the VA who have great expertise in everything from prosthetics to mental health and everything in between. But they're being overrun by these incompetent bureaucrats above them who are not getting the job done. We need people to run that VA like they would run a private hospital, like they'd run the Mayo Clinic, like they'd run the Cleveland Clinic. That's what you all deserve, and that's what we need to do. So I'm not going to go in there and try to fix it myself. Damn, I don't know anything about running a hospital system either. Find the best people to do it. Let's go out and get the best people, get them to run it, so that you can go across the river to the VA in Omaha, do and take advantage of the expertise that they have, and be able to do it without having to wait months and months and months with the frustration, the anger, and the physical effects or mental effects that would have on anybody who goes over there. Those are the 2 things I do to fix the VA. Thank you, sir. Sure. Here's the way I would do it. I would repeal Obamacare, and then I would say to each of the individual states, you have 1 year, mandatory 1 year, to come up with your system in your own state. Here's the thing. A national system's not going to work. We've seen that. I'd go state by state, because here's why. I trust Branstad and the state legislature to decide what's best for Iowa. I trust Ricketts over in Nebraska and the state legislature there to decide what's best for Nebraska. What's best for Iowa is going to be much different than what's best for New Jersey. Now, Let's just look at the two states. New Jersey is the most densely populated state in the country, the most ethnically diverse state in the country, and the most urbanized state in the country. Iowa is one of the most rural states in the country. We have 8.9 million people. You have 3.1 million people. You're spread out over a landmass that's much larger than ours. We're all stuffed into a sausage here, right, with 8.9 million people. Why is it that a system that would work for you would work for us? It makes no sense logically. So what I say is you get 1 year as a state. We all know what the choices are. What are the choices? The choices are going to be, do you want to be able to buy insurance just in Iowa, or you want to buy it over state lines and compete in other places? Do you want people to be able to stay on their parents' policies till they're 26 years old? Do you want to have your insurance be portable, so that if you get insurance you like with an employer and you go to another employer, should you be able to take that insurance with you and have that new employer help pay for your insurance? You know, these are the kind of questions that need to be answered. And each state should be able to make their own decisions about what works best for them. Make deals with the hospitals and the physicians inside their own state about how to pay for that and how to have access to it. And let there be an Iowa solution for Iowa health care and a New Jersey solution for New Jersey health care. They can't punt, though. They got to do something inside a year. Otherwise, we'll have certain people in certain states that will be left out in the cold, and that's unacceptable. But let the governors and the legislators decide it. Another reason is you all should be able to have influence on this. If it's done in Washington, D.C., you will have no influence on it. You'll be victims of it, subjects of it, as you have been for Obamacare. But you're working here in Iowa, you can get to your state reps, you can get to your state senators, you can talk to them about the things that you think are really important to be in that plan. And here's the other reason why democracy is such a great system. And when it's closer to the people, it's better. Because democracy doesn't mean there won't be any mistakes made. But democracy is the best system because it's the one that helps us fix the mistakes that get made the easiest. Because we have access to change who our leaders are. We have the ability to be able to influence those leaders. If you do it in Washington, it's just much too difficult. Last thing is philosophical, right? You know, the 10th Amendment to the Constitution says that anything that's not delineated in that document, that power goes back to the states. I've read it from cover to cover. There's nothing about health care in the Constitution. It should be a state issue. The states should determine it. And you can trust it more if Governor Branstad's doing it and your state legislature is doing it than if they're messing around with it in Congress and Health and Human Services in Washington. So that's the way I would do it. You could craft a plan that worked for Iowans, craft a plan that works for New Jerseyans, and that works for the citizens of Wyoming. Everyone could have their own plan. That's, I think, the right way to go, the simplest way to go, and the way that'll be the most effective.
You impressed many with your can-do attitude. You impressed me. The two things that are most important that I think about for a president are related to the economy and national security. What kinds of things can you do early on in your presidency to address those two things?
Well, on national security, let's remember that I'm the only person on that stage that has had any experience at all in fighting terrorism. For 7 years, I was the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey. I was appointed U.S. Attorney by President Bush on September 10th, 2001. So the job I accepted on the 10th became a heck of a lot different the next day. And I spent the next 7 years of my career fighting terrorism in the state that lost the second most people on 9/11. Only the state of New York lost more people than the state of New Jersey. We lost 700 people that day. What that meant is that I've been on the ground working with the tools from the intelligence community and the law enforcement community that we need to be able to make sure that we keep you safe. And you'll remember that in the 7 years after 9/11, there were no domestic terrorist attacks on soil here from a foreign terrorist group. That wasn't by mistake. That wasn't a stroke of luck. That's because we knew what we were doing and we were aggressive about it. The Obama administration has been much less aggressive, and what have we seen happen? Attack after attack after attack on American soil. Boston, San Bernardino, you know, the attacks on the Marines at the recruiting station, the attacks in Texas, we can go through all of them. Those all happen on Barack Obama's watch because he has weakened law enforcement, he's weakened intelligence. I would strengthen our intelligence capability, put more money into it, but not only that, give them the tools they need to be able to connect the dots before it happens, and strengthen our law enforcement community. It is a disgrace that law enforcement is not supported in this country by the President of the United States, that the FBI director says that there's a chill wind blowing through law enforcement in this country. That's unacceptable. On the economic side, I would do three things: individual taxes, corporate taxes, and regulation. On individual taxes, I would get rid of every loophole and deduction in the individual tax code except for two. home mortgage interest and the charitable contribution deduction. That's it. Everything else goes. All right? See, because if you have the feeling that the tax code is rigged for the rich, you know why you feel that way? Because it is. It is. And because they're the ones who can afford to get the special lobbyists and everyone else down in Washington, throw another page into the tax code that deals with their specific problem or wish or desire. We don't. So think about how easy your taxes would be if those are the only two deductions. And by the way, in return for that, I would lower rates. Lowest rate, there would be 3 brackets, 8%, 13%, 28%. That's it. Right? So now it makes it relatively easy for you, right? Here's how much you make. Here's how much I pay in mortgage interest, deduct that. How much I've donated to charity this year, deduct that. There's my number. Multiply it times the bracket, send in my check, and be done. My father hates this part of my speech because my father is a CPA. He's like, what are you doing to me, man? I said, you're 82 years old, you're retired, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. You already made your money off of this. And so that's the way we would deal with the individual tax system. Simplify it and make sure that then the wealthy are really paying their fair share. Because if all they can deduct is mortgage interest on their principal residence and charitable contributions, then they're doing the same thing you're doing. And if they're making a lot more money, they're going to be paying 28% and a real 28%, not a fake one. On the corporate tax side, I do the same thing. Get rid of the interest, special interest loopholes and deductions, lower the rate from 35%, which is the highest in the world right now, to 25%. Make us in the middle of the world. And end the double taxation. And most of you probably know this, that we're one of the few countries in the world, including North Korea. Like, why do we ever want to be in the same sentence with North Korea, right? Who says that if you're an American company and you make money overseas, in Great Britain, let's say, well, Great Britain taxes you on that money. Then if you want to bring the money back to the United States, we tax you again at the highest rate in the world. So what do? They leave the money overseas. They never bring it back home. The estimates now is over $2 trillion in American profits are overseas. We see these corporate inversions happening now, like Pfizer merging with Allergan, who's an Irish company, so that Pfizer can have an Irish address so they don't have to pay American taxes. Well, it's because we've made it impossible for them to do well. Why? Why do we make it so hard for them to do that? So let's drop their rates from 35 to 25, end the double taxation. And for the money that's overseas right now, they get to bring it home, and they get taxed one time at 8.75%. And they bring that home and invest that money here, but with the tax money, I'd use that money to rebuild our infrastructure. Dedicate that money to roads, bridges, protecting the electric grid, and expanding internet access around the country, places that don't have it. That'll help our education for internet. It'll help our strength against terrorism by protecting the grid. And by improving our roads and bridges, we make ourselves a safer, better country. Lastly, on regulation, this administration in 2014 issued 81,000 new pages of federal regulation in 1 year. 81,000 pages. Forget about who writes that. Who reads it? I mean, and so what you need to do if you're a small business owner, because you're not going to read 81,000 pages, is you have to hire lawyers and engineers and other experts to walk you through that stuff. It costs you money. And then it costs you money to comply with the regulation. We're going to do, when I'm president, what I did as governor. First executive order I signed as governor of New Jersey was to freeze any new regulation from any department or agency for 90 days. And in that 90 days, I sent the lieutenant governor out to meet with businesses all around the state, open forums with Democratic members of the legislature, and I said to them, bring the list of regulations that you hate the most, the ones that cost you the most, the ones that are the most ridiculous. Bring them to us, and we'll consider getting rid of them. At the end of my first year as governor, we got rid of 1/3 of all the regulations my predecessor put in place. Now, we can do this. My first executive order as president will be do the same thing, except we'll need 180 days, not 90. It's a bigger country. We'll make our way around and we'll do exactly the same thing and we'll get rid of regulation. Because think about this, even for a small business like the one we're standing in right now, the cost to comply with federal regulation is $10,000 per employee. $10,000 per employee. And if you're a manufacturer in America, it costs you $34,000 per employee to comply with federal regulation. No wonder we're not growing our economy. No wonder we're not expanding jobs. And no wonder we're not increasing the salaries of working men and women. Because all that money's getting eaten up by taxes and by complying with regulation. Those are the 3 things that I would do on the economy right away, which I think would really lead us to growth and great new salaries for the folks who are already in the workforce to help get them from falling behind to moving forward. Thank you. Sure. I give you these? Well, they'd have to repeal it, and the president would have to sign it. I would sign it, yes, ma'am. It would, no, it would stay in effect until the state passed their own health care plan. So no longer than a year. Obamacare wouldn't stay any longer than an additional year. But like, let's say Iowa, let's say we passed this in February and you gave them a year. If Iowa passed their health care plan in May, Obamacare's dead in Iowa in May, and the Iowa plan takes over. That's the way we go. So there's no gap. Okay, the gap is only created by, there's no gap, and the end is created by the action by the state legislature and the governor to put a new plan in place. You're welcome. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. Listen, I think the only time that the eminent domain needs to be used is when it needs to protect the public safety. So, for instance, I'm in a fight right now in New Jersey. You all remember Hurricane Sandy. Now, the fix for Hurricane Sandy for our coastline is to build a dune system up the entire coast. Now, what that means for most towns along the coast of New Jersey is that we need a strip of land to be able to build the dune on. And so we've gone to folks voluntarily and said, would you please give us an easement? We don't own the property. Give us an easement to build the dune on that land. Overwhelmingly, people have said yes. There's about 400 or 500 holdouts who say, we don't want the dune because we like our view. We like our view. Now, I have to tell you the truth. I got no sympathy for somebody's view, all right? When, in essence, what happens if we don't build this is another storm comes in. We lost 365,000 homes in 24 hours. So I think eminent domain should be able to be used when public safety is involved. But if public safety is not involved, then you can always find ways around this. You can work your ways around. Pipelines can be maneuvered in lots of different ways. And by the way, sometimes you got 2,000 acres of land, of ranch land in your family, where you say, I don't want anybody to build through it. You know, maybe the pipeline company comes up with a price that makes it worth your while. You know, we all are folks who believe in the free enterprise system. We're all capitalists. So they have to figure out a way to make it worth your while or to work around you. But for eminent domain, I've used it in New Jersey, and I've used it, and I'm using it right now in that limited circumstance of public safety. Well, listen, but let's look at the other side of this too, right? We need to be able to provide energy to this country in lots of different ways. And so we got to find a balance. Now, the balance doesn't necessarily have to be that you have to say yes, but I'm also not going to tell you that I'm not in favor of pipelines, because I am in favor of pipelines, and I would have built the Keystone Pipeline if I was President of the United States. I would build the Keystone Pipeline. Yeah, I understand that. But you know what? Guess what? If you're looking for a politician or anybody, a candidate you're going to agree with 100% of the time, go home and look in the mirror. You're it. You're the only person you agree with 100% of the time, right? I mean, so my point is, no, I'm not laughing. I'm saying I have a difference of excuse, which is, listen, what I'm telling you is I believe that pipelines can and should be built. But what I didn't say to use eminent domain. But I want to make sure when you said, well, there could be an earthquake and a pipeline could burst, right, that's absolutely true. It could happen. Anything can happen. My point to you, though, is that I don't want you to walk away from this because I say I don't think eminent domain should be used, to walk away thinking I'm against pipelines, because I'm not. I'm not against pipelines. Right. But you need to know where I stand. So my point to you in making that comment was that we're never going to agree. You and I, or me and anybody in this room, are never going to agree on 100% of things. If we did agree on 100% of things, then you'd know I was lying to you. Well, if you only agree with Bob on that, and you agree with me on 90% of other things, then you should vote for me and you shouldn't vote for the Democrats. Right? I don't know. Right? I mean, listen, my point to you is I'm not making fun of your position or anybody else's position. But what I'm saying is that there will be dozens and dozens and dozens of issues that come before a president of the United States. And when you're making up your mind, unless you say to me that the pipeline is my make or break issue, it is the only issue I care about, it's the issue I'm going to vote on, and anybody who's in favor of a pipeline, I'm not voting for them, then you're not going to vote for me. That's okay. That's fine. But I kind of doubt that anybody in this room has just one issue that they care about so much that every other issue confronting our nation doesn't matter to them. That's the only one. If that's it, if we agree, I get your vote. If we don't agree, I don't. But this is my point that I was trying to make at the top. You're not going to walk out of here confused about what I think. And those guys who were standing on the stage on Thursday night, they're trying to confuse you, right? They're trying to, run the old Heisman, push you off a little bit, right? And just make sure that, make sure that you don't hear them real loud, because then maybe you can think they're going to be okay with you. When you ask me a question, I give you a direct answer. That's exactly the way it'll work. I don't want to get in a debate with you now, because then you're going to have to run for president. But one other thing, what do you got? All right. Yes, sir. Listen, I spent a lot of time in New Hampshire where they're having big arguments about pipelines right now, and they don't have many of them. And here's what you also find: in New Hampshire, they have some of the highest energy bills in America. I mean, the fact is that we got to make choices. We have to balance and make choices in this country. And if you don't want pipelines, that's okay. That means you're going to have really high energy costs, and then you got to balance that off. I mean, everything has a risk in life. There are no guarantees. There are no sure things. In life, everything takes a risk. You make decisions on how much risk you're willing to tolerate on building pipelines. We built them in New Jersey. We're continuing to build them, and we'll continue to build them for as long as I get to be governor, because I want our folks to have affordable energy, and you look like you have a follow-up. There you go. I like this guy. This guy's my kind of guy. I like him. Yes, ma'am. Oh, no, hold on now. We got to go to this young lady. Yes. Sophie, come on up here. Come on, Sophie. Don't be scared. I definitely don't bite. How old are you, Sophie? 11. Well, it's nice to meet you. I'm Chris. I have a daughter who's 12, so right around your age. Nice to meet you, okay? Thank you. And we're going to sign a sign for Sophie. Hey, can you hold that for me? Thanks. Yep. That's me, bringing families together. Okay, so let me tell you what I've done in New Jersey. There are 10,000 fewer employees on the state payroll today than the day I started as governor. Everybody can talk a big game in Washington, D.C. about how they're going to reduce the size of government. You're looking at someone who actually has reduced the size of government. The only way to do it is to cut programs. You can't do it any other way. Now, when I came into office, we had an $11 billion deficit on a $29 billion budget. And I sat down over 6 weeks, and we cut 800 programs in the budget. Now, let me tell you, that wasn't any fun, because every one of those programs had a constituency, every one of them. And I heard from a lot of them, emails, phone calls, letters, protests. But I had a job to do. It was to bring the budget into balance. So what you're going to want to hire in Washington, D.C. is somebody who's actually done this before, not somebody who's only talked about it. And so the way I would do it would be to do it the way I did it in New Jersey. You know, when people retire, don't replace them. Consolidate positions. Make services more efficient. I didn't lay off one person in those 10,000. It was all people who retired, who I said, they retire them, you don't replace them. And I used to do things like sit down and have meetings with each of my cabinet officers, and every one of them, you know, they're all Republicans, or most of them are Republicans. There are a few Democrats as well. Most of them are Republicans. And you know what? They all would tell me when I was running for office, you're right, Governor, we got to cut the size of government. Then they get a cabinet job, and they go, well, I just need another 40 or 50 employees to actually do my job the right way. And so I would meet with them individually when they would ask for increased employment, and I would remind them that they were Republicans. And I would remind them they were working for a Republican governor. I would remind them what we ran on. And you know, that's the kind of thing you need to do. It's constant oversight and discipline by the executive. Because otherwise, everybody thinks their job is the most important job, and if they just had 40 or 50 more people working for them, boy, they could get the job done even better. And you got to just say no to that. You got to say no to that temptation. And it makes people unhappy sometimes. But you know what? Here we are, 10,000 fewer employees today than the day I started as governor, and no one would have believed when I got there we could have done that. But we did it. And we can certainly make the federal government a lot smaller, and when I'm president, we definitely will. Yes, sir.
Do you have an opinion on trying to make decisions by the U.S. Supreme Court, and what qualities would you look for in appointing a Supreme Court that has been anticipated with the next president? Will you appoint at least one, maybe more?
Yeah, could be a 3 or 4, depending upon age and health. Listen, trends, I don't think there are trends in recent Supreme Court decisions. They're kind of all over the place. And so that means it's a court that's very, very evenly divided and moves back and forth. I'll be very direct with you. I think that the judges you should appoint are judges who only interpret the law and interpret the Constitution, who don't make law and make constitutional rights out of whole cloth. I just don't think unelected people should be doing that. If we're going to create new rights and new laws, it's the elected people that you elect that should make those decisions, because if you don't like those decisions, you can kick those people out. You appoint judges for life, they make those decisions, you got no place to go with them. And in terms of what kind I would appoint, go look at the opinions of Justice Sam Alito. Justice Alito had the job I had before I had it, U.S. Attorney in New Jersey. Then he was a Third Circuit Court of Appeals judge, and then President Bush appointed him to the United States Supreme Court. He is a quiet, consistent conservative. And what I would do is go to Justice Alito, who I know well, and once I had an opening on the Supreme Court, I'd say to him, Sam, tell me the 4 or 5 quiet, consistent, conservative judges that you see in the federal court system that you like and that you think would be a great addition to the Supreme Court. Send them to me, I'll interview them, and I'll pick the one I like. That's the way I would pick them. Yes, ma'am, in the back. We put a very detailed plan on our website, and I gave a speech about it all the way back in May at the Portsmouth Naval Yard in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Our Army is the smallest active duty Army we've had since 1940. Our Navy is the smallest Navy we've had since World War I. Our Air Force, the President's looking to cut it by 50%. So we need to rebuild our military. This President has done great harm to it. The President and sequester has done great harm to our military. So here's what I would do. No fewer than 500,000 active duty soldiers in the Army. That would be an increase of 60,000 soldiers. No less than 185,000 active duty Marines in the Marine Corps. Go from 260 to 350 ships, and have no fewer than 2,600 coded aircraft ready to go for the Air Force. If we do those things, we'll be back to really being a strong American military. And here's the thing that it'll do the most. You mentioned those deployments. Right now, because we're so much smaller, the deployments are more frequent and they're longer. And that's not good for either our fighting men and women's physical health or mental health. So we need to increase the size of the Army to be fair to the men and women who have volunteered to serve in it. And so I wish you great blessings on your family, and thank you for the service and sacrifice they're making and that you're making too. And that's what I do as Commander-in-Chief. Well, we should start off by not electing a lobbyist president. That would be a good thing. And then what I would say to you is, we can reduce that. What we really want to reduce is the revolving door through government. You know, the folks who come in, they work for a little while, they go back out in their lobbyists, and they go back in. And I think that's the influence you're really talking about, because they get unnatural access to what's going on. And so, you know, we have to lengthen the period of time that people have to stay away from lobbying if, in fact, they've been in the government. You're never going to keep people away. And I don't think we want to keep people away. But what you want to do is to make sure that no one has an undue influence. No one has more influence than the next guy. That what determines this is the power of your ideas and how good they are, not, you know, which guy you buddied up to when you were working inside the White House or working inside Congress. I think that's what annoys people the most. So we need to lengthen the ban. After you've been in government for how long you can have to wait till you come back and lobby the government. I think that's the best way to do it. You're welcome. Sir, over there with sunglasses.
New Jersey, I'm here active duty military over in Nebraska. It's an honor to be in the room with you. My question is, so understanding you were talking about the Department of Defense and troops and ships, and that stuff is going to be easy to see. How do you convince the Congress that our nuclear triad is aging and expensive, is absolutely vital to national security, and you can't see everything, so it's hard to convince people that it requires a very large amount of budget?
Yeah, and listen, one of the things I didn't mention that's also my plan is to modernize the Ohio class of submarines, which, as you know, is part of the nuclear triad. You'll remember back in a few debates ago, we have someone who's running for president, I think the same guy you were referring to. They asked him about the nuclear triad, and he didn't know what it was. I mean, he didn't know, right? He did not know what it was. I mean, think about that for a second. Didn't know. You're going to have the nuclear codes, and you don't know what the nuclear triad is. I think his answer was nuclear. That's serious. It's very powerful and serious. Okay, yeah. Now, I think we do have to spend, and I think we have to do it over time, because you know it's going to take about anywhere from $750 billion to $1 trillion of investment to modernize our entire nuclear arsenal. We're not going to do that overnight. I'd start with the Ohio class of submarines, because I think our submarine-based nuclear capability is our most important. It's the least vulnerable, and it's the most effective. So I'd start with the Ohio class of submarines. Then I'd go to our air-based. Then I'd go to our land-based. And so what I want to do is modernize the ones that are the least vulnerable to attack from the other side, and then modernize those last. So that's the order I would go in. I'd start with the submarine-based, then move to the air-based, then move to the land-based. But it's something that needs to be done, but that probably needs to be done over a decade or more, all right? Because it's going to take that much time physically to do it, and we're going to need to have that much time to spread the cost out over a period of time. So that's what I would do. And where from in New Jersey? Monmouth County. He's a Jersey Shore boy, everybody. He's a Jersey Shore boy in Nebraska. Thank you for your service. Appreciate it. Yes, ma'am. Well, listen, first it's how you live your life, right? I mean, the President of the United States needs to set an example in how he lives his life. So I'm a Catholic, and we're practicing Catholics, and we believe in our faith. Our children all go to Catholic school because we believe that faith should be a part of their everyday life, and that we want to send them to a school where our values will be supported, not undercut. So part of it is an example. Part of it is the way you talk about things. Now I'm pro-life. I'm the first pro-life governor in the history of New Jersey. They told me I could never get elected being pro-life in a blue state like New Jersey, but I've won twice. And I haven't hid the fact that I'm pro-life from anyone. I talk about it because I believe that every life is an individual gift from God, and that we need to talk in that way. I think you put it very well. It's not about talking down other people. It's about talking up your values and letting people hear it, because we can change hearts and change minds, but we need to do so in a way where we're talking about why these things play such a large role in our life and why they're so important in our life. I think the third thing is to make sure that there's not an assault on religion in our public institutions. Religion doesn't have to be a part of every public institution, but it should not be assaulted. And so the government needs to stand up at times when people are assaulting those things and say no. And we've seen some of that happen in the last few years. And as far as those other issues are concerned, whether it's abortion or gay marriage, my positions are really clear on it. I'm pro-life and I've opposed gay marriage. But the fact is that we need to talk about these things and to promote our values. And if we do that, we're going to win a lot of converts because I think the way that we talk about those issues and the way we promote life is something that's attractive to a lot of people in this country if they take the time to think about it. Often they just don't take the time to think about it. By us speaking, it may force them to think about it. And if they do, I think we'll get a lot more converts than we won't. And so as president, those are the things that I would do. And I think you're right. Fact is that freedom of religion in this country is about everybody being able to practice their religion the way they see fit, without imposing it upon anyone else. But the government also has to make sure that we're not establishing a religion, atheism or anything else. No establishment of religion either, so that you can practice your religion freely without interference from the government or anyone else. That's important too, and part of that practice is speaking about it. We need to speak from our hearts, and I think everyone in this country should be encouraged by their president to be able to speak their mind on their faith. And I think if we do that, we'll be a lot better off. So thank you for your question. Love that shirt, man. His shirt has a picture of the Gipper on there, and it says WWRD, what would Reagan do? It's a good shirt. Like that. You encourage me.
I had the opportunity to go to Israel twice in 2015, and the second time I went there, I had the opportunity to stay with a host family on that trip there. And we were talking about, how they feel about the United States and stuff. And they said they recently feel as kind of betrayed by the United States after things like the Iran deal and a lot of other things Obama has done to strain Israel and promote the other countries around them. What would you do to reestablish Israel's trust in the United States?
Well, I think they're right. This president has been the most anti-Israel president in my lifetime. It's not even close. By far and away, the most anti-Israel president in my lifetime. Here's the first thing I would do. In my first 100 days, I would call Bibi Netanyahu, and I would invite him to come to Camp David. And on the first evening we were in Camp David together, I would give him a few hours just to vent. Tell me all the ways that he thought that they were mistreated over the last 8 years. Let him get it out of his system. Then the next 2 days, we would talk about what his vision and my vision were for the world and how we were going to work together to restore the strength of American-Israeli relations and how that relationship was going to help to influence the world in a positive and peaceful way. That's the only way to do it. We love the state of Israel, and they love the United States of America. And the fact is that we need to stand up for them, because I'll tell you, the Judeo-Christian approach to things is under attack around the world. And we need to make sure we stand together. There are Christians being beheaded across the Middle East just because of their religion. The Jewish people can relate to this better than anyone. And we need to all work together to make sure that we prevent those kind of things from happening and we strengthen that relationship. So that's exactly what I would do. Now, my staff's telling me I can take one more question, which means I will take two. The reason for that is I want you to know that I want to remind them I'm still the boss. And, you laugh about that, but I will tell you, you know what it's like running for president? What it's like running for president is you're surrounded every day by people that are significantly younger than you, and they tell you where to go and what to do every minute of the day. The only place where I am free from the tyranny of the young is standing right here. Right here. This is the only place I'm free of it. So they say one, I say two. I got a Hawkeyes guy at the bar right across there. I want to give the Hawkeyes a chance. You're in like Cornhusker country, though, aren't you?
No, absolutely not.
I walked in. I tell you, the last 2 times I've come around here, I've seen all these
Actually-
people in Nebraska. She's got the Nebraska thing on. All right.
Actually, I have a club that's Iowans against Iowans that root for Nebraska.
All right. There you go. What do you got for me?
Talking about things that need to be fixed in this country, our welfare system is the most screwed up system in the world. We're the only country that promotes laziness. In Germany, if you want to get assistance from the country or from welfare, you have to live in a boarding house where no men are allowed if you have kids, and you have to go to school for 15 months. They help you get a job, and once you get a job, then they give you assistance for every child you have. We're the only country that promotes laziness. I think that first of all, if you want a welfare check at the end of the week, you do 40 hours of community service, and you take a piss test.
I think there was a question in there somewhere. Let me tell you this. I think this president never, ever talks about the intrinsic value of work. Never hear him talk about it. About the intrinsic value of work. Not just the paycheck that you get that helps you to raise your family, but the goodness for the soul of going to work every day. That when you have to get up in the morning and get showered and get dressed and get to some place at a certain time, and that you labor during the day and come home from those labors and have stories to tell your family and a sense that your labor is valued. That's part of what fills a person's soul. And when they're sitting on the couch watching Dr. Phil all day, that doesn't help. And so we need to go back to, and we went to this in New Jersey, the work requirement for food stamps. If you're an able-bodied person, you're not disabled, you want food stamps, you got to go work. You got to go work. And I'm believing a national service option in this country. And the national service option should be expanded just beyond, kids who want to come out of college and do national service, but from those who want other help from the government. Your ideas, I think, are the right kind of ideas, because in the end, what we want to promote is an absolute respect for work in this country. And we don't have that now. This president thinks that since we have more people on food stamps than ever before, that's a success. It's a failure. It's a failure of him. It's a failure of his government. It's a failure of this economy. And the fact is, America is an extraordinarily generous, compassionate country. And we don't want to see people go hungry. But we are also tired of being taken advantage of. And there's a difference. That's right. That's right. And that's, I think, the difference. The difference is, are we a compassionate country who's going to be taken advantage of, or a compassionate country that won't be taken advantage of? And I think right now we're being taken advantage of, and that's, I think, because this president does not value the intrinsic goodness of work. And, he seems to have played enough golf to tell us that that's probably true, too. All right, last question. I'm going to go to this lady right here. What do you got?
So I am also from Nebraska, and you are my favorite president. I know that.
Thank you.
But in Nebraska, we're close. Our primary is in May.
Yeah.
And I'm not participating in that candidate. His name's Donald Trump.
Okay.
And I have not liked him. And I want to vote for you, but I will vote against him at all costs. How can you guys, tell him to go back home?
Listen, the voters of Iowa are going to start that process tomorrow night. We're going to learn a lot tomorrow night about Iowa. I've gotten to spend a lot of time here over the last 6 years, as I said off the top, and I believe in the goodness and the common sense of the people of Iowa. And we're going to find a lot out tomorrow night. I don't believe that the people of Iowa are going to want to send the wrong kind of message to America. And America's going to be listening tomorrow night. Everyone's going to be watching. Whenever people are voting for the very first time, after all this talk for the last year, we're finally going to get some action. You know, we're going to want to see that. So don't let your heart be troubled. Anybody who says this race is over, it's laughable. No one's even voted yet. And everyone's like all upset about like what's going to happen. Well, man, nobody's even voted yet. And by the way, by March 15th, there'll only be about, I think, 15% of the delegates even decided. We got a long way to go here. And everybody in this room who's going to caucus on Monday night, your vote is an extraordinarily important vote. And don't give in to the idea that you have to vote for somebody that the Des Moines Register or the pundits or the chattering class on television or the pollsters tell you is the person you need to vote for. You need to vote for the person who you believe in, who you trust, who you admire, and who you want to be president. And if you do that, your vote is never wasted, no matter what position that person comes in that particular primary, because there's lots of primaries to go yet. Iowa's the most important thing until a week from Tuesday when New Hampshire's the most important thing. And then after next Tuesday, New Hampshire's the most important thing until a week from Saturday when South Carolina will be the most important thing. And then Nevada will be the most important thing. And then the 11 states on March 1st will be the most important thing. And it'll be make or break, do or die every night on the news. No, it's not. You know when it's do or die? When someone gets enough delegates to actually clinch the nomination. And that's months away. So I'll see you in Nebraska in May. Don't you worry. All right. So you all made a great choice. You all made a great choice. I see a few of you are having adult beverages here. You come see me in a place like this, by the time we get to the end of the meeting, I'm more good-looking and charming than I was at the beginning. That's a really good thing. I want to say two things to you before I go. I have traveled since Wednesday from Dubuque to Sioux City and Council Bluffs and hit just about everything in between. And now heading back east. I'm going to end up tonight with your governor, with Governor Branstad in West Des Moines. And so we got still a long day ahead of us. But I want to thank you for coming out on a Sunday afternoon. Whenever people get cynical about politics, I tell them, come to Iowa or New Hampshire. Because if you come to Iowa or New Hampshire, you see the amount of time all you folks have spent with all of us over the last year. It is truly heartwarming about how much you care about your country, that you'd be willing to spend as much time as you've spent. The good news is, in 24 hours, you're rid of us. We're off your TV sets. We're out of your mailboxes. We're off your telephones. Yeah. That always gets the loudest bit of applause, right? We are away from you at least until August or so, because Iowa's going to be a big, important state in the general election. To beat Hillary Clinton, we got to win Iowa. And so we'll be back here bugging you again in August, September, and October to make sure that Iowa goes red this time and goes for the Republican Party and the Republican nominee, and we don't have Hillary Clinton as the next president of the United States. And I want to tell you one last thing. 2 nights ago, Mary Pat and I were in Burlington, and I was having a town hall meeting, and this lady's question reminded me of this. I had a gentleman raise his hand, stand up, and he said, we're sending our son to Iraq in 4 months for his first deployment. And I want to know what kind of commander-in-chief you'll be, because that's personal to me. And when I got done listening to his question, I turned and looked to my right, his left, and I saw his wife sitting next to him, and she was crying. And at that moment, I was no longer a presidential candidate. I was a father. We have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, 22, 19, 15, and 12. And I thought to myself when looking at this couple, how they must be feeling. That the most precious thing that they have in their life, this life that they've nurtured from the time it was in the womb, through birth and infancy and childhood and young adulthood, now they have to hand that son over to the military, to a commander-in-chief, And they've got to count on that military and that commander-in-chief to treat their son the right way, to keep him safe, to let him meet his mission. And I could see the fear in her eyes. And it led me to think, as well, as we do here today, we have a number of veterans in this room. And there were 3 veterans that I identified in that room that night, because the caps they had on, like you fellas. But they had caps. One of them said World War II veteran. One of them said Korea veteran. One of them said Iraqi freedom veteran. And I thought to myself while I was looking at their hats and looking at this woman, that who were the men who sent those men into war? For that World War II veteran, Franklin Roosevelt and Harry Truman sent them into war. For that Korea veteran, it was Harry Truman and Dwight Eisenhower sent them into war. For that Iraqi freedom veteran, it was George W. Bush who sent them into war. Put aside the politics for a moment. You're either Republican, Independent, Democrat, left, right, center. I think we can all agree that as commanders-in-chief, those were good, decent men who made us proud. Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, George W. Bush. Parents could turn their sons and daughters over to those commanders-in-chief and feel proud. Feel like they knew that they understood the depth of the responsibility they had, and that they would do the best they could to define the mission for those men and women and give them the tools they needed to protect themselves and make them proud to serve for that commander. So tomorrow night, when you go into the caucus, what I suggest you do is to picture that that mother and father are standing on either side of you. And that before you mark that ballot, you have to look them in the eye and say to that mother and father, I believe, fill in the blank, whoever it is the best person to be your son's commander-in-chief. There are names on that ballot tomorrow night that it would be laughable to say that out loud. Laughable to say that out loud. Yet we have lots of people who are supporting some of those names, at least in the polls. Look tomorrow night in the eyes of the mothers and fathers who are sending their sons and daughters to war. Who's tested, who's ready, who's mature enough to have that awesome responsibility? See, because this campaign's been entertaining, believe me. It's been entertaining for me to be a part of it, to hear some of the things that are said on that stage sometimes and some of the stuff that's said off that stage and on the TV set. Entertaining. And I don't mind you all being entertained. It's okay. Entertainment is fine. But showtime is over, everybody. Showtime is over. This is not a reality TV show. That mother and father want their son brought home to them safely. And the only way that happens, the only way that has a chance of happening, is if the commander-in-chief is someone who not only has the respect of this country, but has the respect of the world. That when we have other countries look at America and look at our president, who is the personification of our nation, the symbol of our nation, that they take that seriously. And that the men and women who sacrifice themselves are working for a commander-in-chief who they can be proud of and who they're willing to fight with and for. See, that's your choice tomorrow night. All this other chattering stuff you hear on television and that you read in the newspaper, all this horse race baloney that they fill your heads with, that's not the choice. Those two parents are what I'm going to have in my mind for the rest of my time I'm running for president and for every day that I get to serve as president. I'm going to think of them. And I hope tomorrow night when you walk into that caucus that that's who you're thinking of. That's who you're thinking of. Because the sacrifice they're making by offering their precious son up to defend our nation and our values is something that we must honor with our votes. We must honor with the choice that we make tomorrow night. I'm ready. I'm ready to lead this country. I'm mature and I'm tested, and I've been there. I've fought the terrorists. I've led a difficult state. I've made hard decisions. I've dealt with crisis. And to the extent that anybody can possibly be ready for the awesome responsibility that it is to be President of the United States, I will tell you this. I'm ready to look you in the eye, and I am ready to look that mother and father in the eye and say to them, I will do two things as Commander-in-Chief. I will define the mission for your child or your grandchild, and then I will do absolutely everything I need to do to have their back and make them proud. Those are my two jobs. And you need to ask yourself if some of the other folks on that ballot tomorrow could do the same thing, and whether they would represent this nation to the rest of the world in a way that would make you all proud. That's the choice. Showtime is over. It's game time. And when it's game time, you want real players on the field, not showboats. You want real players. I'm a real player. I've been tested. I'm ready. I want your vote tomorrow night. I want your support. But more than anything else, I want a commander-in-chief for this nation that can make us strong again and make us proud again. And if you make that kind of choice, I'll live with whatever your verdict is. But that's the choice we need to make. And whether you live in Iowa or whether you live in Nebraska or whether you live anyplace else, when you get your moment, that's what I'm asking you to do. And for the Iowans who are here, your moment is tomorrow night. And it's time. It's way past time for us to end the frivolity and start the rebuilding of our nation, its image, its pride, and its ability to serve its citizens. I'm ready to do that, and I hope I get your vote tomorrow night. Thank you very much.